Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The glass doors of Sterling Enterprises gleamed under the morning sun, reflecting the faces of hundreds of employees rushing through like ants, marching toward their queen. Among them was Sophia Bennett, 27 years old, clutching a lukewarm coffee in one hand and a resignation letter in the other. Her navy blazer was slightly wrinkled from being shoved into her bag the night before, and her heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. This was it. After 3 years of working herself to exhaustion, she was done. Finished. The fluorescent lights of the executive floor buzzed overhead as Sophia stepped out of the elevator, her stomach twisting into knots. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. Walk in, hand him the letter. Walk out. Simple. Clean. No drama. But her palms were sweating, and the coffee cup trembled slightly in her grip. Down the hallway, the corner office loomed like a fortress. Behind those frosted glass walls sat Alexander Hayes, the 32-year-old CEO who had built Sterling Enterprises from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. Cold, ruthless, impossible to please. At least that's what everyone said. Sophia had her own reasons to think so. 3 years of staying late, skipping lunches, rewriting reports at midnight. And for what? A single nod of acknowledgement. Maybe a curt thank you if she was lucky. She was tired. Exhausted, really. And last night, when her sister called crying because Sophia had missed yet another family dinner, something inside her snapped. No job was worth losing herself. She reached the door and knocked twice, her knuckles rapping sharply against the wood. "Come in." His voice was deep, clipped, businesslike. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Alexander sat behind his massive desk, eyes fixed on his computer screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. He didn't look up. Typical. Sophia cleared her throat. "Mr. Hayes, I need to speak with you." "1 moment." Still typing. Not even a glance. Sophia bit the inside of her cheek, anger bubbling up like a pot about to boil over. This was exactly why she was leaving. She wasn't a person to him. She was a tool, a cog in his perfectly oiled machine. Finally, he stopped typing and looked up. His steel gray eyes met hers, sharp and assessing. "Miss Bennett, what is it?" She stepped forward, the resignation letter crinkling in her hand. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately." For the first time since she'd known him, Alexander Hayes looked genuinely surprised. His brows drew together, and he leaned back in his chair, studying her as if she'd just spoken a foreign language. "You're what?" "Resigning. Quitting. Leaving. Whatever you want to call it." She placed the letter on his desk with more force than necessary. "I'm done." Alexander's jaw tightened. He picked up the letter, scanned it quickly, then set it down with deliberate calm. "This is unexpected." Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "Is it? Really? Because I've been running on fumes for months, and you haven't noticed? Or maybe you did and just didn't care." His eyes darkened. "I care about the work you do." "The work? Not me. Just the work." She shook her head, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what it's like working for you? You demand perfection, but nothing is ever good enough. I stay late, I skip meals, I cancel plans with my family. And for what? A paycheck? A title that means nothing?" Alexander stood, his tall frame casting a shadow across the desk. "If you felt this way, you should have said something." "I should have said something." Sophia's voice cracked, anger and frustration spilling out like a broken dam. "You don't exactly invite conversation, Mr. Hayes. You barely look at me when I'm in the room. I'm just another employee to you." "That's not true." "Then what am I?" The question hung in the air, sharp and challenging. Alexander opened his mouth, then closed it, his expression unreadable. Sophia shook her head, her heart pounding. She'd said too much, revealed too much. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Sophia, wait." She froze, her hand on the doorknob. He'd never called her by her first name before. "Don't go. Please." The word please sounded foreign coming from him, like he wasn't used to saying it. She turned slowly, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. "Why? Why should I stay?" "Because," he hesitated, his usual confidence faltering. "Because I don't want you to leave. That's not a reason." "Yes, it is." He stepped around the desk, closing the distance between them. His voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable. "You're right. I don't say enough. I don't show enough. But you're not just another employee, Sophia. You never have been." Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" Alexander ran a hand through his dark hair. Frustration etched across his face. "I'm terrible at this. At talking. At expressing anything that isn't related to quarterly reports or profit margins. But the truth is, I notice everything about you. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. The way you hum under your breath when you think no one's listening. The way you always bring me coffee, even though I never ask for it." Sophia's heart was racing now, her mind struggling to process his words. "You notice that? How could I not?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You're the only person in this building who isn't afraid of me. The only one who challenges me, who makes me want to be better." Sophia's hand trembled, and before she realized what she was doing, she hurled the coffee cup. It flew through the air in slow motion, the lid popping off, lukewarm liquid arcing toward him like a caffeinated tidal wave. It hit him square in the chest, soaking through his expensive white shirt and tie. Alexander froze, eyes wide, coffee dripping down his torso. Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God!" I didn't mean." He looked down at himself, then back up at her. And then, to her utter shock, he laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, genuine laugh that lit up his entire face. Sophia stared at him, completely thrown off balance. Alexander Hayes was laughing. The man who never smiled, who never showed emotion, was standing in his office drenched in coffee and laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking." She fumbled for words, mortified. He pulled off his tie, still grinning. "No, that was fair. I probably deserved that." "You definitely deserved that," she muttered, then winced. He chuckled again, unbuttoning his ruined shirt. "Do you always throw beverages at your boss when you quit?" "Only the ones who drive me insane." "Fair enough." He tossed the shirt onto his chair and grabbed a spare one from the closet behind his desk. Sophia tried very hard not to notice the way his shoulders moved, the lean muscle beneath his undershirt. "Focus, Bennett. Focus." When he turned back around, now in a clean shirt, his expression had softened. "I meant what I said. I don't want you to leave." Sophia crossed her arms, still shaken by everything that had just happened. "Then why didn't you ever say anything? Why didn't you treat me like I mattered?" "Because I'm an idiot." He said it so plainly that she almost laughed. "I built this company by keeping people at a distance, by not letting anyone get too close. But with you," he paused, his jaw working. "With you, it's different." "Different how?" "You scare me." Sophia blinked. "I scare you?" "Yes. Because when you're around, I can't focus. I can't think straight. And that terrifies me because I've spent my entire life in control. But around you, I lose it." Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. "Alexander, Before she could finish, his assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Hayes, your 9 o'clock is here." He exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across his face. "Tell them I'll be a few more minutes." "But sir—" "Rachel, please." There was an edge to his voice, but also something else. Desperation. "Fine." The intercom clicked off. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "You have a meeting. I should go. Number." He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping just inches from her. "Not until you hear me out." She tilted her head back to meet his eyes, her pulse racing. "What else is there to say?" "Everything." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Sophia's breath caught. "What is that?" "The reason I called you in here this morning." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. Sophia's knees nearly buckled. Are you insane?" "Maybe." His voice was rough, raw with emotion. "But I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks, trying to figure out how to do this. How to tell you that you're the only person who makes me feel like I'm more than just a machine. That when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to be human." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Alexander. I know this is sudden. I know I've been terrible at showing you how I feel. But Sophia, I don't just want you to stay as my employee. I want you to stay as my partner. In everything." Her hands were shaking now, her mind reeling. "You're proposing? Right now? After I just threw coffee at you?" He smiled, that rare, devastating smile that made her forget her own name, especially after you threw coffee at me. "It proved you're not going anywhere without a fight. And I need someone who fights. Someone who challenges me. Someone like you." Sophia's vision blurred with tears. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. This was the last thing she'd expected when she walked into this office. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll give me a chance to prove I'm not just the cold, heartless CEO everyone thinks I am. Say you'll let me spend the rest of my life making up for every time I didn't tell you how much you mean to me." His voice cracked on the last words, and Sophia saw it then. The vulnerability, the fear. This powerful, untouchable man was terrified she'd say no. She looked at the ring, then back at him. Her logical brain screamed that this was crazy, that you didn't marry your boss after throwing coffee at him. But her heart was saying something entirely different. "You're serious, completely, and if you say no, I'll respect that. But I had to try. I couldn't let you walk out that door without knowing how I feel." Sophia wiped at her eyes, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. "You're impossible. I know. You drive me absolutely insane. I know that too. And you're asking me to marry you after 3 years of barely speaking to me?" He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to gently cup her cheek. "I'm asking you to marry me because I've spent 3 years falling in love with you and being too much of a coward to admit it." Her breath hitched. You love me? More than I've ever loved anything in my life." The words hit her like a tidal wave, and suddenly all the anger, all the frustration, all the exhaustion melted away. She saw him clearly now. Not the ruthless CEO, not the impossible boss, just Alexander. Flawed, vulnerable, human. Sophia closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face, then opened them and smiled. "You're lucky I didn't bring a full cup of coffee. Does that mean?" "Yes," she laughed through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. You impossible, infuriating, wonderful man." "Yes." The relief that washed over his face was almost comical. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. She melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne mixed with the faint aroma of spilled coffee. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "For not giving up on me." Sophia pulled back just enough to look up at him, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Don't thank me yet. You still have a lot of making up to do," he grinned. "I'll spend every day proving I'm worth it." "Good. Because I'm keeping that resignation letter as insurance," he laughed, pressing his forehead against hers. "Deal." The news of their engagement spread through Sterling Enterprises like wildfire, though not in the way Sophia had expected. Alexander insisted on keeping it private at first, at least until they figured out how to navigate the complicated waters of workplace relationships and public perception. But secrets had a way of slipping out, especially in a building full of curious eyes and gossiping tongues. It started small. A knowing glance from Rachel, Alexander's assistant, when Sophia walked past his office the next morning. Then a whispered conversation between two junior analysts that went silent the moment Sophia entered the break room. By lunchtime, the rumors were flying. "Did you hear Bennett and Hayes are together?" "No way. He doesn't date employees. I heard she threw coffee at him and he proposed on the spot." "That's insane." "Is it though? Have you seen the way he looks at her?" Sophia tried to ignore it, burying herself in work and avoiding eye contact with anyone who seemed too interested. But it was hard when every meeting felt like a performance, every interaction scrutinized. Alexander seemed unbothered, which somehow made it worse. He walked through the halls with his usual confidence, nodded curtly at employees, and conducted business as if nothing had changed. Except, when they were alone, everything had changed. Late one evening, after most of the staff had gone home, Sophia found herself in his office again. This time, though, the atmosphere was different. Softer. The city lights glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Alexander stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline. "You're thinking too hard again," Sophia said, leaning against the doorframe. He glanced back at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "How can you tell?" "Because you get this little crease right here." She walked over and tapped the space between his eyebrows. "It's your tell." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm thinking about how surreal this is. U.S. Surreal good or surreal bad?" "Good. Definitely good." He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I'm dreaming." Sophia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. "If you're dreaming, then I am too." They stood like that for a while, wrapped in comfortable silence. Then Alexander spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "I want to do this right, Sophia. I don't want people thinking I'm taking advantage of my position, or that you're only with me because I'm your boss. I want them to see that this is real." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Then let's show them. How? By being us. No hiding. No pretending. If people have a problem with it, that's their issue, not ours." He studied her face, his expression unreadable. "You make it sound so simple." "Because it is." She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you, Alexander Hayes. I don't care what anyone else thinks." His eyes softened, and he leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss that was both tender and desperate, like he was afraid she might disappear if he didn't hold on tight enough. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Sophia grinned. "So, about that ring." Alexander laughed, pulling the velvet box from his desk drawer. "I was wondering when you'd ask." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and Sophia stared at it, still not quite believing this was real. "It's beautiful. You're beautiful." She rolled her eyes, though her cheeks flushed. "You're such a sap. Only for you." The next morning, they walked into the building together. Not hiding, not pretending. Just together. The reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. Someone dropped a stack of papers. Sophia felt Alexander's hand settle on the small of her back, a silent reassurance. She straightened her shoulders and kept walking. By the time they reached the executive floor, half the building knew. By noon, everyone knew. And by the end of the day, Sophia realized something important. She didn't care. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. She had Alexander, and he had her. That was all that mattered. But not everyone was thrilled about the news. A week later, Sophia found herself face-to-face with Victoria Lang, the company's chief operating officer and one of Alexander's oldest friends. They met in a private conference room, and from the moment Victoria closed the door, Sophia knew this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. "So," Victoria began, arms crossed, leaning against the table. "You and Alexander?" Sophia met her gaze evenly. "Yes. Me and Alexander." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. "You realize how this looks, don't you? It looks like two people in love. Or it looks like an employee who saw an opportunity and took it." Sophia's jaw tightened. "If you have something to say, Victoria, just say it." "Fine." Victoria stepped closer, her voice cold. "I've known Alexander for 15 years. I've watched him build this company from nothing. And in all that time, I've never seen him lose focus. Until you." Sophia's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not a distraction. Aren't you? He proposed to you after you quit. That's not exactly rational behavior. It's called being human. Something you might want to try sometime." Victoria's eyes flashed. "I'm trying to protect him. From what? From me?" Sophia shook her head, disbelief coloring her tone. "I'm not the enemy here. You don't know him like I do." "You're right. I don't." Sophia stepped forward, her voice firm. "I know him as the man who stays up until 3 in the morning perfecting presentations because he's terrified of failing. I know him as the man who secretly donates to charities but never talks about it. I know him as the man who's so afraid of being vulnerable that he built walls so high even he can't climb over them. And I know him as the man who loves me. Not because I'm convenient, not because I'm an opportunity, but because he chose me, and I chose him." Victoria stared at her, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. Then, slowly, her expression softened. "You really love him?" "More than anything," Victoria sighed, running a hand through her hair. Okay, I'm sorry. I've seen people use him before. I didn't want that to happen again. It won't. I promise." Victoria nodded, then surprised Sophia by offering a small smile. "He's lucky to have you." Sophia smiled back. "I'm lucky to have him too." Planning a wedding while running a billion-dollar company turned out to be more complicated than either of them anticipated. Sophia quickly learned that Alexander's idea of simple and her idea of simple were two very different things. "We could just go to the courthouse," Sophia suggested one evening as they sat in his penthouse, surrounded by wedding magazines and color swatches that his overeager event planner had dropped off. Alexander looked up from his laptop, frowning. "The courthouse? You want to get married at the courthouse?" "Don't say it like it's a prison," Sophia laughed. "It's practical. Quick. No fuss." He set the laptop aside and pulled her into his lap. "Sophia Bennett, I waited 3 years to tell you how I feel. I'm not rushing the wedding. But all of this," she gestured at the chaos around them, "it's too much. I don't need a giant cake or 500 guests or a dress that costs more than my car. What do you need? You. Just you." His expression softened, and he pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then let's compromise. Small wedding. Close friends and family. Somewhere that means something to us." She tilted her head. "Like where?" "There's a garden outside the city. My mother used to take me there when I was a kid. It's quiet. Beautiful. Private. Sophia's heart squeezed. That sounds perfect. Good. He smiled. That rare, unguarded smile that still made her stomach flutter. Because I already reserved it. You what? She swatted his arm playfully. Alexander Hayes, did you just manipulate me into agreeing with you? Maybe. He grinned, completely unapologetic. But it worked. She tried to glare at him but failed miserably, dissolving into laughter instead. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. Unfortunately. He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and all thoughts of wedding planning melted away. The garden was everything Alexander had promised. Nestled in the hills outside the city, it was a sea of blooming roses and winding stone paths, with a small gazebo overlooking a crystal-clear pond. On the day of the wedding, the sky was a brilliant blue, the kind of perfect weather that felt like a blessing. Sophia stood in a small dressing room inside the garden's estate house, staring at herself in the mirror. Her dress was simple, elegant ivory silk that flowed like water, with delicate lace sleeves and a low back. Her hair was swept up in a loose bun, a few curls framing her face. She barely recognized herself. You look beautiful, her sister Emma said, adjusting the veil. Sophia smiled, tears already threatening to spill. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. Emma squeezed her hand. You deserve this. All of it. A soft knock interrupted them, and Sophia's father poked his head in. Ready, sweetheart? As I'll ever be. He offered his arm, and Sophia took it, her heart pounding. They walked down a petal-strewn path toward the gazebo, where a small group of guests waited. But Sophia only saw one person. Alexander stood under the gazebo, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored black suit. His hands were clasped in front of him, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was tight. He was nervous. When their eyes met, though, everything else fell away. His expression melted into something soft and open, and Sophia felt her own nerves disappear. This was right. This was where she was supposed to be. Her father placed her hand in Alexander's, and she felt the warmth of his grip, steady and sure. The officiant began speaking, but Sophia barely heard the words. She was too focused on Alexander, on the way he was looking at her, like she was the only person in the world. When it came time for vows, Alexander cleared his throat, his voice slightly rough. Sophia, I'm not good with words. You know that. But I need you to know something. Before you, I didn't believe in love. I thought it was a distraction, a weakness. But you proved me wrong. You showed me that love isn't about losing control. It's about finding someone worth being vulnerable for. Someone worth fighting for. And I will fight for you every day for the rest of my life. Tears streamed down Sophia's face, and she didn't bother wiping them away. Alexander. She took a shaky breath. You once told me I scared you. Well, you scare me too. Because loving you means trusting you with every part of me. The messy parts, the broken parts. And that's terrifying. But it's also the best thing I've ever done. So I promise to keep challenging you, to keep throwing coffee at you when you deserve it. She grinned through her tears. And to love you with everything I have. Alexander laughed, his own eyes suspiciously bright. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Alexander didn't hesitate. He pulled Sophia into his arms and kissed her, and the world erupted in applause. But Sophia didn't hear it. She was too busy falling even more in love with the man who had somehow become her everything. Married life, Sophia discovered, was both easier and harder than she'd expected. The easy part was being with Alexander, waking up next to him every morning, sharing lazy Sunday breakfasts, falling asleep tangled together. Those moments were pure magic, The hard part was navigating their new reality at work. Despite Alexander's assurances that nothing would change professionally, everything had changed. Sophia was no longer just another employee. She was the CEO's wife, and that came with a whole new set of complications. People treated her differently. Some were overly friendly, hoping to curry favor. Others were distant, assuming she'd gotten her position through nepotism rather than merit. And then there were those who resented her entirely, convinced she'd slept her way to the top. Sophia tried to ignore it, throwing herself into her work with even more determination. She arrived early, stayed late, and made sure every project she touched was flawless. But no matter how hard she worked, the whispers followed. One afternoon, she overheard two colleagues in the hallway. Must be nice, being married to the boss. Yeah, she doesn't even have to try anymore. Sophia clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep walking. But the words stung. That night, she barely spoke during dinner. Alexander noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Sophia," he reached across the table, taking her hand. "Talk to me." She sighed, setting down her fork. "People at work. They think I only have my job because of you. That's ridiculous. You earned your position. I know that. But they don't. And no matter how hard I work, they'll always see me as your wife first and an employee second." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Do you want me to say something?" "To who? The entire company?" She shook her head. "Number. That'll just make it worse." "Then what do you want?" "Honestly, I don't know." She rubbed her temples, exhaustion seeping through. "Maybe I should quit." "Number." His voice was firm. "You're not quitting. Not because of them. But Alexander. You're one of the best people in that building, Sophia. You don't walk away because a few insecure people can't handle the fact that you're talented and married to me." She looked up at him, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "You really believe that?" "Of course I do. And if anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with me." Despite herself, Sophia smiled. "My fierce protector. Always." The next week, Alexander held a company-wide meeting. Sophia stood at the back of the conference room, confused about why she'd been asked to attend. Alexander stepped up to the podium, his presence commanding immediate silence. "I'm sure many of you have noticed changes recently, specifically regarding my relationship with Sophia Bennett." "Hayes," Sophia corrected softly, though only those nearest heard. He smiled faintly. "Sophia Hayes. There's been speculation, rumors, and I'm here to set the record straight. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Sophia is my wife, that's true, but she is also one of the most talented, hard-working individuals in this company. Long before we were together, she was excelling in her role. Her ideas have contributed to several of our most successful projects. Her dedication is unmatched, and anyone who thinks otherwise is welcome to review her work directly." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "But let me be clear. I will not tolerate any discrimination or disrespect toward her or anyone else based on personal relationships. Merit is what matters here, results, and Sophia delivers both. If anyone has a problem with that, my door is always open." The room remained silent. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then another. And another. Until the entire room erupted in applause. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Alexander stepped down from the podium and walked directly to her, ignoring the hundreds of watching eyes. He took her hand. "You okay?" She nodded, unable to speak. He squeezed her hand gently. "Good. Because we're a team now. In everything." After that meeting, things shifted. Not everyone changed their minds overnight, but the blatant whispers stopped. People started treating Sophia with the respect she'd earned, and slowly she began to feel like herself again. Months passed. Work stabilized. Their relationship deepened. and Sophia started to realize something important. She was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. One evening, as they walked through the park near their penthouse, Alexander suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked. "Nothing." He turned to face her, his hand settling on her waist. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am." She laughed softly. "You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm 32. Ancient." He grinned, pulling her closer. "But seriously, I never thought I'd have this." "Have what?" "Someone who makes me want to be better. Someone who sees past the CEO and loves the man underneath." Her heart squeezed. "Alexander, I know I'm not easy to love. I'm stubborn and workaholic and emotionally constipated." She burst out laughing. "Emotionally constipated?" "It's true," he smiled ruefully. "But you love me anyway. And that's the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me." Sophia reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "You're right. You are stubborn. And a workaholic. And yes, sometimes emotionally constipated. But you're also kind and brilliant and surprisingly funny when you let yourself be. And I love every part of you. Even the parts that drive me crazy. Especially those parts." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and Sophia melted into him. When they finally pulled apart, she grinned. "Besides, someone has to keep you humble," he laughed. "Consider the job permanent." They walked home hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. And as Sophia looked up at the man beside her, the man who'd gone from her impossible boss to her impossible husband, she realized something. She wouldn't change a single thing. Not the coffee throwing, not the dramatic proposal, not the workplace drama. Because all of it had led her here, to this moment, to him. And that was worth everything. 6 months into their marriage, Sophia discovered something unexpected. She was pregnant. She stared at the test in her hand, her heart hammering so loudly she thought Alexander might hear it from the other room. 2 pink lines, clear as day. Oh my God. She'd been feeling off for weeks, nauseous in the mornings, exhausted by noon, emotional over the smallest things. She'd chalked it up to stress, but apparently her body had other ideas. "Sophia?" Alexander's voice drifted through the bathroom door. "You okay in there?" "Fine." Her voice came out higher than intended. Just give me a minute." She heard his footsteps retreat, and she took a shaky breath. A baby. They were going to have a baby. Panic and joy warred inside her chest. They'd never discussed kids. Not seriously. There'd been vague mentions of someday, but someday had apparently arrived a lot sooner than expected. She opened the bathroom door to find Alexander sitting on the edge of their bed, concern etched across his face. "What's going on? You've been acting strange all week." "Nothing." "I'm fine." "Sophia." He stood, crossing to her. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." She bit her lip, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she held out the test. Alexander stared at it, his expression utterly blank. Then he looked at her, then back at the test. Are you pregnant?" She nodded. "Yes, I'm pregnant." For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the test like it might explode. Sophia's stomach dropped. "Say something, please." He swallowed hard, his voice rough. "We're having a baby." "Yes." "Oh my God." He looked up at her, and she saw it then, the tears pooling in his eyes. "We're having a baby." Before she could respond, he swept her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around. Sophia squealed, half laughing, half crying. Alexander set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "You're pregnant. We're going to be parents." "Apparently." "You're not." Scared? Terrified, she admitted. But also happy? Incredibly happy. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I can't believe this. We're having a baby. You keep saying that, because I'm processing. He grinned, that boyish, unguarded grin that made her fall in love with him all over again. This is everything. They spent the rest of the evening wrapped in each other's arms, talking about baby names and nurseries, and all the things they'd need to figure out. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Sophia realized this was exactly where she was meant to be. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit Sophia like a freight train, leaving her pale and exhausted. Alexander hovered like an overprotective mother hen, which was both endearing and infuriating. "You need to eat something," he insisted one morning, holding out a plate of toast. She glared at him from the couch, wrapped in a blanket like a burrito. "If you shove that toast in my face one more time, I'm throwing it at you." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "You have a concerning habit of throwing things at me, only when you deserve it." He set the plate down and sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm just worried about you." "I know," she softened, leaning into his touch. "But I'm fine, I promise." "You're not fine. You threw up 3 times this morning. That's normal." "Unfortunately." He frowned, clearly unconvinced. Sophia took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. "We're both fine, okay?" His expression melted, and he leaned down, pressing a kiss to her stomach. "Hey, little one, go easy on your mom, okay?" Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes. Damn hormones. "Sorry." He looked up, alarmed. "Did I say something wrong?" "Number." She wiped at her eyes, laughing through the tears. You're going to be such a good dad." His eyes glistened. "I hope so." "You will be. Trust me." As the months passed, Sophia's belly grew, and so did Alexander's overprotectiveness. He insisted she cut back on work, much to her frustration. "Alexander, I'm pregnant, not dying." "I know. But you need to rest." "I am resting. By working from home, that's not resting." She glared at him. "If you try to put me on bed rest, I'm filing for divorce." He grinned. Empty threat. "You love me too much, unfortunately." Despite the banter, Sophia secretly appreciated his concern. He went to every doctor's appointment, asked a million questions, and read every parenting book he could get his hands on. One night, she found him in the nursery they'd been setting up, assembling a crib with a look of intense concentration. "Need help?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Number." "I've got it." He tightened a bolt, then frowned when the side panel wobbled. "Maybe." She laughed, waddling over. "Here, let me see the instructions." "I don't need instructions." "Alexander," he sighed, handing them over. "Fine." Together they finished the crib. Sophia sat on the floor, exhausted but content, watching as Alexander placed a stuffed bear inside. "It looks perfect." He sat beside her, pulling her into his side. "Everything's perfect." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You know, a year ago, I was ready to quit and never see you again. Best decision you never made." She smiled. "Best decision I never made." The day Sophia went into labor, Alexander completely fell apart. It started with her water breaking at 3 in the morning, soaking through the sheets. Alexander shot upright, eyes wide. "What?" "What's happening, I think." She winced as a contraction hit. "I think it's time." "Time? Time for what?" "Time for—" "Oh, God." He scrambled out of bed, tripping over his own feet. "The hospital. We need to go to the hospital." "Where are my keys? Where are your shoes?" "Alexander, calm down." "Calm down?" He was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. You're in labor, and you want me to calm down? She couldn't help but laugh, even through the pain. You're supposed to be the calm one. I don't feel calm. I feel like I'm dying. You're not the one having the baby. Good point. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose himself. Okay. Hospital bag. Where's the hospital bag? Hall closet. He sprinted out of the room, returning seconds later with the bag and her shoes. Got it. Let's go. They made it to the hospital, though Sophia was fairly certain Alexander broke several traffic laws in the process. The next 12 hours were a blur of contractions, breathing exercises, and Alexander looking progressively more terrified. You're doing great, he kept saying, holding her hand. She glared at him through another contraction. You did this to me. I know. I'm sorry. You're lucky I love you. I know that, too. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the baby arrived. A girl, tiny and perfect, and screaming at the top of her lungs. Sophia held her daughter for the first time, tears streaming down her face. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. Alexander stood beside the bed, staring at the baby with an expression of pure wonder. She's perfect. She's ours, Sophia whispered. He reached out, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. His daughter immediately wrapped her fingers around his, and Alexander's face crumpled. Oh my God. Sophia, she's holding my hand. She laughed, exhausted, but deliriously happy. She likes you. I love her. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I love her so much. Me too. They named her Grace. Grace Amelia Hayes. And from the moment she entered the world, she had both of them wrapped around her tiny finger. Alexander turned out to be exactly the kind of father Sophia knew he'd be. Attentive, loving, and hilariously out of his depth. One night, Sophia woke to the sound of Grace crying. She started to get up, but Alexander was already there, scooping the baby into his arms. I've got her, he whispered. Go back to sleep. Sophia watched from the bed as he paced the nursery, gently bouncing Grace and humming under his breath. Her heart swelled. You're a natural? He glanced over, smiling tiredly. She's got your eyes. And your terrible timing. It's 3 a.m. She has your stubbornness, too. Noted. Sophia must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows. She padded to the nursery and found Alexander asleep in the rocking chair, Grace cradled against his chest. Both of them were snoring softly. She grabbed her phone and snapped a picture, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was everything. Returning to work after maternity leave was harder than Sophia anticipated. She missed Grace constantly, calling home every few hours to check on her. Alexander, meanwhile, had cut his hours drastically, determined to spend as much time as possible with their daughter. You don't have to do that, Sophia said one evening. Yes, I do. He looked up from where he was giving Grace a bottle. I missed so much of life building this company. I'm not missing this. But the company. We'll be fine. He smiled at Grace, who was watching him with wide, curious eyes. She won't be this small forever. And I don't want to look back and realize I traded time with her for a few more hours at the office. Sophia's eyes stung. I love you. I love you too. He glanced up, his smile softening. Both of you. Grace cooed, as if in agreement. Months turned into a year, and before they knew it, Grace was toddling around the penthouse, leaving a trail of toys in her wake. Alexander had mastered the art of working from home, conducting board meetings with Grace, occasionally appearing on camera, much to everyone's amusement. Apologies, he'd say, as Grace climbed into his lap. My assistant is very demanding. No one seemed to mind. In fact, it humanized him in a way nothing else had. The cold, ruthless CEO had become a devoted father, and people respected him even more for it. One evening, as they sat on the floor playing blocks with Grace, Sophia looked at Alexander. Who would have thought? Thought what? That we'd end up here. She gestured around. Married, parents, happy. He leaned over, kissing her softly. Best coffee I ever got hit with. She laughed. You're never letting that go, are you? Never. Grace knocked over the block tower, squealing with delight. Both of them turned to her, and Alexander scooped her up, making her giggle. You're trouble, you know that, he told her. Just like your mom. Sophia grinned. She's going to be unstoppable. Good. He looked at Sophia, his eyes full of warmth, just like her parents. 2 years later, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Grace was a whirlwind of energy, constantly exploring and asking a million questions. Sophia had been promoted to vice president, a role she'd earned through sheer determination and undeniable results. And Alexander, well, he was still Alexander, driven, focused, but softer around the edges. One Saturday morning, Sophia woke to find Alexander's side of the bed empty. She frowned, pulling on a robe and padding downstairs. She found him in the kitchen, making pancakes, while Grace sat at the counter in her pajamas, flour dusting her nose. We're making breakfast, Grace announced proudly. I can see that. Sophia kissed the top of her daughter's head. Are you helping Daddy? Yep. I cracked the eggs. Alexander held up a bowl full of eggshells. She's very enthusiastic. Sophia bit back a laugh. I can tell. They ate breakfast together, the three of them squeezed around the kitchen island. Grace chattered nonstop about everything and nothing, and Sophia felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was her life now. Chaotic, messy, and absolutely perfect. Later that day, Alexander suggested they visit the garden where they'd gotten married. Grace had never been, and he wanted to show her. It's beautiful there, he told their daughter. Lots of flowers. Grace's eyes lit up. Can I pick some? If you're very gentle. The garden was just as stunning as Sophia remembered. Grace ran ahead, her delighted laughter echoing through the paths. Be careful, Sophia called out, though she knew Alexander was watching their daughter like a hawk. They walked to the gazebo where they'd exchanged vows, and Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. Hard to believe it's been 3 years. Alexander slipped his arm around her waist. Best 3 years of my life. She leaned into him. Mine too. Even the crazy parts, especially the crazy parts. Grace came running back, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers. For you, Mommy. Sophia's heart melted. Thank you, sweetheart. They're beautiful. Grace beamed, then ran off again, chasing a butterfly. You're thinking something, Alexander said, studying Sophia's face. How can you tell? I know you. She smiled. I was just thinking about that day. When I walked into your office planning to quit. Me throwing coffee at you. Best worst decision of my life? He chuckled. I still have the shirt, you know. You do not. I do. It's in the back of my closet, a souvenir. You're ridiculous. He kissed her temple. And you love me for it. Unfortunately. Grace ran back, tugging on Alexander's hand. Daddy, can we get ice cream? It's 11 in the morning. Please? He looked at Sophia, who shrugged. It's Saturday. Live a little. Fine. He scooped Grace into his arms. But only if you promise not to tell Grandma. Grace giggled. I promise. They drove to a small ice cream shop in town, and Grace insisted on getting chocolate with sprinkles. Alexander got vanilla, Sophia got strawberry, and they sat outside on a bench, watching the world go by. This is nice, Sophia said. Alexander nodded. Grace perched on his lap, ice cream smeared across her face. Yeah, it is. She looked at him, her heart full. You know, I never thanked you. For what? for not letting me quit, for fighting for us, for being the kind of man worth throwing coffee at. He laughed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Any time. They sat there until Grace finished her ice cream, sticky and happy, and exactly where they were meant to be. That night, after Grace was asleep, Sophia and Alexander sat on the balcony of their penthouse, a bottle of wine between them. The city lights sparkled below, but Sophia only had eyes for the man beside her. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "The way things were before, when it was just work and no complications." He considered the question, then shook his head. "Number. Not even a little. Really. Really." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Before you, I had success, money, power. But I didn't have a life. You gave me that. You and Grace. You gave me a reason to care about more than just the next deal or the next quarter." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. "You're getting sentimental again. I'm allowed," he smiled. "I'm married to the most incredible woman in the world. It does things to a man." She laughed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Alexander Hayes. I love you too, Sophia Hayes. And I always will." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from years of knowing someone inside and out. And Sophia realized something important. She'd come so far from that scared, exhausted woman who'd walked into Alexander's office with a resignation letter and a chip on her shoulder. She'd grown, evolved, become someone she was proud of. And Alexander had been there every step of the way, challenging her, supporting her, loving her. It hadn't been easy. There'd been fights and misunderstandings and moments when she'd wondered if they'd make it. But they had. Because at the end of the day, they chose each other. Every single time. And that was what mattered. Not the grand gestures or the perfect moments, but the choice, the commitment, the love. Grace's voice drifted through the baby monitor. "Mommy? Daddy?" Sophia smiled. Duty calls. They went to Grace's room and found her sitting up in bed, clutching her stuffed bear. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Bad dream." Alexander sat on the edge of the bed, pulling Grace into his arms. "Want to tell us about it?" She shook her head, burying her face in his chest. Sophia sat on the other side, stroking Grace's hair. "It's okay. We're here." "Always," Alexander added. Grace calmed down, her breathing evening out. "Can I sleep with you?" "Of course." They carried her to their room, tucking her between them. Grace snuggled close, and within minutes, she was asleep. Sophia looked at Alexander over their daughter's head. He smiled, and she smiled back. And in that moment, everything was right with the world. 5 years after that fateful coffee-throwing incident, Sophia found herself standing in the same office where it had all begun. Sterling Enterprises had grown exponentially, and Alexander had recently announced plans to step back from day-to-day operations. He wanted to focus more on their family, on the life they'd built together. The company was in good hands. Victoria had been promoted to CEO, and Sophia had been offered the position of Chief Strategy Officer. It was surreal, standing in this space that held so many memories. The place where she'd almost walked away from everything, where Alexander had proposed, where their entire future had begun. "You're thinking too hard again." She turned to find Alexander leaning against the doorframe, hands in his pockets, that familiar small smile on his face. "Just remembering." He crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Good memories, I hope." "The best." She leaned back against him. "Do you ever regret it, proposing the way you did?" He was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "Number. It was impulsive and crazy and completely unlike me. But it was real, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the coffee stains. Especially not the coffee stains." She laughed, turning in his arms to face him. "You're insane. And you love me. Unfortunately." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and Sophia melted into him the way she always did. Some things never changed. A small voice interrupted them. "Oh, Mommy and Daddy are kissing again." They pulled apart to find Grace standing in the doorway, now 5 years old and full of sass. Sophia grinned. "You'll understand when you're older." "Never," Grace declared dramatically. "Boys are gross," Alexander chuckled. "I'll remind you of that in 10 years. Grace skipped over, and Alexander scooped her up. "What are you doing here, mischief? Grandma brought me. She said you were working and I could visit." Right on cue, Sophia's mother appeared in the doorway. "Hope that's okay. I know you're busy. Never too busy for this one." Sophia reached over, tickling Grace, who shrieked with laughter. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, the 4 of them. Sophia's mother regaled them with stories from Grace's morning adventures, and Grace showed them a drawing she'd made of their family. It was adorable, if slightly abstract. "That's Mommy," Grace explained, pointing to a stick figure with wild curly hair. "And that's Daddy. And that's me. And that's our dog." "We don't have a dog," Alexander pointed out. "We should get one." Grace looked at him hopefully. Sophia shook her head, laughing. "Nice try, sweetheart. But you know Daddy's allergic." Grace pouted. "But I want a puppy." "How about we get you a fish instead?" Alexander suggested. Grace considered this. "Can I name it Sparkles?" "Absolutely." She grinned, satisfied. As the sun began to set, Sophia's mother took Grace home, promising ice cream and a movie. Sophia and Alexander stayed behind, finishing up a few last things. "Ready to go home?" Alexander asked, shutting down his computer. "Almost." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos. "Look at this." He came over, peering at the screen. It was a picture from their wedding day. Both of them laughing, completely unguarded. "We look happy." "We were happy," she corrected. "We are happy." He kissed the top of her head. The best kind of happy. They left the office together, hand in hand. The city stretched out before them, full of light and life and endless possibilities. And as they drove home, Sophia thought about everything that had led them here. The fights, the laughter, the tears, the joy. All of it had been worth it. Because at the end of the day, she had Alexander, and Grace, and a life she'd never dreamed possible. It hadn't been easy. Love never was. But it had been real. Messy and complicated and absolutely, perfectly real, and that was all that mattered. When they got home, they found Grace already in her pajamas, curled up on the couch with Sophia's mother. "Movie time," Grace announced. "What are we watching?" Sophia asked, sitting beside her daughter. Grace held up a DVD, The Princess Bride. Alexander groaned good-naturedly. "Again?" "It's a classic," Grandma defended. "He can't argue with that." Sophia grinned. "Come on, you know you love it." He sighed but sat down, pulling Sophia close. "Fine, but I'm fast-forwarding through the kissing parts." Grace giggled. "You always say that, Daddy. And I always mean it." They settled in, the 4 of them, watching a movie they'd all seen 100 times. But it didn't matter, because they were together. And that was everything. Halfway through, Grace fell asleep, her head in Sophia's lap. Sophia stroked her daughter's hair, feeling a wave of contentment wash over her. Alexander caught her eye and smiled. She smiled back. No words needed. Later, after Sophia's mother had gone home and Grace was tucked into bed, Sophia and Alexander stood in their bedroom, getting ready for the night. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" Sophia asked. "If I hadn't thrown that coffee at you?" Alexander paused, considering. "I think we would have found our way to each other eventually." Really, really. He pulled her close. Some things are just meant to be. You're such a romantic. Only with you. She kissed him, and he kissed her back, and for a moment, the rest of the world faded away. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia rested her forehead against his. Thank you. For what? For everything. For being you. For loving me. For giving me the life I didn't know I needed. He cupped her face in his hands. Thank you for throwing coffee at me. She laughed. Best decision I ever made. They climbed into bed, wrapped in each other's arms. And as Sophia drifted off to sleep, she thought about the girl she used to be. The one who'd walked into that office ready to quit. Ready to give up. She'd come so far since then, grown so much. And she owed it all to one impulsive, coffee-soaked moment. To the man who'd seen her, really seen her, and loved her anyway. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was theirs. And that was more than enough. 10 years after the coffee incident, Sterling Enterprises was celebrating its 20th anniversary. The company had thrown a massive gala, inviting employees past and present, investors, and media. Sophia stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching the crowd mingle. She wore a stunning emerald dress that Alexander had picked out, insisting it matched her eyes. Grace, now 10 years old, and growing up far too fast, stood beside her in a junior version of Sophia's dress. She thinks we're twins, Grace had announced earlier, twirling in front of the mirror. Sophia's heart had squeezed. You look beautiful, sweetheart. You too, Mommy. Now, Grace tugged on her hand. Can I go find Daddy? He's probably networking. Go ahead, but stay where I can see you. Grace rolled her eyes but smiled. I know, Mom. Sophia watched her daughter weave through the crowd, confident and bright. She was so much like Alexander, it was almost frightening. Determined, focused, but with Sophia's warmth and humor. A perfect blend of both of them. Sophia Bennett Hayes. The voice was familiar, and Sophia turned to find Victoria approaching, a glass of champagne in hand. Victoria. It's been a while. Too long. Victoria smiled. You look incredible. So do you. They stood together, watching the party unfold. It's surreal, isn't it? Victoria said. What is? All of this. She gestured around. 10 years ago, this company was half the size, and you and Alexander were barely speaking. Sophia laughed. We've come a long way. You both have. Victoria turned to her. I owe you an apology, by the way. For what? For doubting you? Back when you and Alexander first got together, I was protective of him, and I didn't see what he saw in you. But I was wrong. You've been good for him. The best thing that ever happened to him, honestly. Sophia's eyes prickled. Thank you. That means a lot. Victoria clinked her glass against Sophia's. To second chances. To second chances. Across the room, Alexander was deep in conversation with a group of investors. Grace had found him and was now perched on his shoulders, grinning down at the adults. Sophia couldn't help but smile. He's changed, Victoria observed. Alexander? Completely. He used to be so rigid, so closed off. And now? Now he's human. She laughed. You did that. We did that together. The gala continued. Speeches were made. Awards were given. When it was Alexander's turn to speak, he took the stage with Grace still in his arms. He set her down, ruffling her hair, then stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. His voice was steady, confident. 20 years ago, I started this company with nothing but an idea and a lot of stubbornness. The crowd chuckled. Over the years, Sterling Enterprises has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We've faced challenges, celebrated successes, and built something I'm incredibly proud of. But tonight, I want to talk about something more important than profit margins or quarterly reports. He paused, his eyes finding Sophia in the crowd. I want to talk about the people who make this all worthwhile. The employees who show up every day and give their best. The investors who believed in us. And most importantly, the family who reminds me why I do this in the first place. His gaze lingered on Sophia, and she felt her cheeks flush. 10 years ago, a very smart, very brave woman walked into my office and quit. She told me I was impossible to work for, that I demanded perfection, but never appreciated the people giving it. And she was right. That moment changed my life, because it forced me to look at myself and realize I was missing the point. Success isn't just about building an empire, it's about building a life, and I'm grateful every single day that she gave me a second chance. The room erupted in applause. Sophia's eyes stung with tears. Grace bounced excitedly beside Alexander. "That's Mommy." Alexander grinned. "Yes, it is, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me." After the speech, people swarmed Alexander, congratulating him, but he made his way through the crowd, straight to Sophia. "You're going to make me cry in public," she said, half laughing, half serious. "Good." He pulled her close. "You deserve to be celebrated. I didn't do anything. You did everything." He kissed her forehead. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." Grace appeared, tugging on both their hands. "Can we dance now?" Alexander scooped her up. "Of course. What do you say, Sophia? Care to dance with us?" "Always." The three of them made their way to the dance floor. Other couples joined, but Sophia only saw her family. Alexander held Grace in one arm and Sophia's hand in the other, and they swayed to the music. "This is perfect," Grace sighed contentedly. Sophia met Alexander's eyes over their daughter's head. "Yeah, it really is." The night wore on, and eventually Grace fell asleep in a chair, exhausted from all the excitement. Sophia and Alexander stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the sounds of the party muted behind them. "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" Sophia asked. "Feels like yesterday, and also like a lifetime ago." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." She leaned back against him. "You?" "Only that I didn't tell you how I felt sooner." She smiled. "Better late than never." "Much better." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle. And Sophia thought about the journey they'd been on, from strangers to enemies to lovers to partners. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Every fight, every tear, every laugh, all of it had led them here, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. What do you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments on a scale from 0 to 10. What's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.